What do you think, guys? Is it much farther? Sure is a dark and stormy night. Oh, hi there. Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. We're talking Star Frontiers here. I wanted to kind of follow up on the last video that I did. I want to talk about the Vrusks again. In my last video, I was saying never play poker with a Vrusk because of the chitinous insect-like faces that they have. You'd never be able to see if they've got a tail. And it kind of led me down some old conversations I had with a biologist when I used to work in a planetarium. He was saying that I was showing him all the different aliens of Star Frontiers in the rulebook, and when I got to the page with the Vrusks, not only was he talking about, the facial expressions, which was the topic of that last video, but he also touched upon something that I mentioned in that last video, and I thought, I better do a follow-up, because it's big, and as per the title of this whole video here, I'd like to see a Vrusk get into a car. Now, Tony Oldfield was the name of the biologist guy that I used to work with at Jodrell Bank in England, and I showed him the rulebook, and when he got to the Vrusks, the thing that really stood out when he viewed this creature was, that wouldn't work. I was like, what do you mean that wouldn't work? He's like, no, there's no way that form of body would function. I was like, what are you talking about? It's got this sort of L bracket shape, like there's a whole 90-degree turn that the form of this creature takes. That wouldn't work. I was like, you sure? That seems... Well, what about a praying mantis, which is clearly the closest resemblance to a Vrusk? Surely, if a praying mantis can have its upper torso and stuff, isn't this basically the same thing? And he's like, no. If you look closely at a praying mantis, it's not low bug-like bottom and then upright torso like you've got with the Vrusks here. No, it's basically a longer insect shape where the thorax and the abdomen are on a plane. I mean, they've got a little bit of lift, but I think because we only ever see footage and pictures of praying manti, on branches and stuff, the back part of their body is already kind of on a tilt to begin with, and we just assume that the the abdomen is further along in the same plane. But when you look at the Vrusk, no, it's like you've got the body, or the thorax here, and the abdomen doing this. That wouldn't work. And in fact, in the Alpha Dawn rulebook, if you look closely, they've actually got a biological cutout showing there's a rib cage down there that actually does a turn, and then you've got the upper torso and abdomen and the head. And I was just like, you're right. Now it's aliens and it's science fiction, so don't worry about it. But it always left a little moment in my head. I thought, darn it, that bothers me. How come the Vrusks don't work? How can I fix that? And over time, I started thinking in terms of just an everyday adventure. A Vrusk is a real challenge to tackle for jumping through things or leaping onto stuff or what have you, or, as per this video, getting into a car. Now, some people might be like, what's the big deal? In the beginning of Alpha Dawn, there's a little comic book where they tell the story of a human and a Vrusk Starlaw agent. They're chasing this Sathar agent that is doing some stuff, and there's a picture of the human and the Vrusk in a car, giving chase, flying down the streets of the city. And if you look really close, it looks like that Vrusk is sitting just like the human. But I was like, yeah, but how is that exactly working? I mean, it's a rear view shot, so no big deal. And there's another really well-known painting from the artist Jim Burns that shows all of the aliens from Star Frontiers, and they're on a vehicle, and he cheated. He had the Vrusk hanging off the back of the car. A little bit like R2-D2 C-3PO at the back of Luke's land speeder. I was just like, yeah, you're cheating a bit. You're not showing how the Vrusk gets into the car. Now, it's a science fiction realm. They know about Vrusks, so one would assume, okay, your average car manufacturer in Star Frontiers obviously has some kind of way to adjust the seat. Maybe the back folds down and the bottom goes up. Maybe it tilts right back and the Vrusk can sit like he's riding a horse. In fact, in researching for this video, I found this picture on a Star Frontiers website that shows a Vrusk riding on the back of a horse. And in fact, Tom, is this your picture? I wasn't going to ask you about it because I wanted this to be a surprise. Tom from Tabletop Tap Room often goes by the name of Gédéon, and I see in this picture, it's posted by somebody called Gédéon, so that's got to be you, Tom, right? Really nice picture, thank you. I thought to myself, we are generally implying that a Vrusk rides everything like a saddle. He's got the seat under him, and I guess if there's any kind of, like in a car seat, like in this car, this back must pull down and the seat must sit up, and that's where the Vrusk goes. But there's problems with that. There's a lot of issues with that. First of all, a Vrusk is a very large creature. Like, it's 1.5 meters tall, not the end of the world, but it's also 1.5 meters from front to back. That's pretty big. And as a comparison, I was trying to find what's something 1.5 meters tall. Well, for those Doctor Who fans out there, the TARDIS is apparently, if they've measured it, 1.53 meters in a square shape. So if a Vrusk was to stand in the TARDIS, I know it's bigger on the inside, but I'm talking that box shape. The Vrusk would be, his tail would be kicking out the back of the box, because it is a large creature, and we think of the TARDIS as a pretty big thing, and I've seen it when I went to London a couple times, but it's not going to hold a Vrusk. A Vrusk is a large creature. So in a car like this, how's he going to do it? What's the possibility? Now, what I ended up doing was thinking it through, and I thought, okay, well, you just go with it. Like, don't worry about it too much. But in the back of my mind, there was that little making it as real as possible mindset, and I thought, there's got to be a way to make a Vrusk get into a car. But it's also got to be quick. How many action sequences are there in movies where somebody's like running to a car? Quick, get in, let's go. What do you do if somebody's like, come here, get into my car, fast, and you're a Vrusk? It's like, oh, can you now hit the button and we'll let the seat do its rotation, then I'll get in. No, that's going to slow down the pace of the action of the sequence, right? So I thought, there's got to be a way. How can we make it so that the Vrusk can actually get into the car? Or, worst case scenario, what if it's a pickup truck? Do you remember in Star Trek 4, Kirk and Spock are trying to find the whales, and they end up on the other side of the bay, and Gillian Taylor from the Cetacean Institute stops her truck and is like, hey, you guys need a lift? Yeah, sure, okay. Now, I'm not proposing any of you are going to have your Star Frontiers campaign travel back in time to the 1980s in San Francisco, but go with me here. This is a science fiction scenario that could happen. Luckily, Vulcans are human-shaped, so Spock is able to get into Gillian's pickup truck without a problem. Okay, same with Kirk. But what if, let's say, in your campaign, your Vulcans are the Vrusks? What if you've got a Vrusk science officer that now has to get into Gillian Taylor's truck? You're hooped. She doesn't have these motorized special chairs. What are you going to do? You're in a bit of trouble. And then, inspiration struck. I was thinking to myself, I was working on a thing, either assembling a bit of furniture or I was doing some scaffolding or something. And I encountered a metal shaft thing with like a piece of, almost like a vertebrae inside of the metal shaft. It was allowing it to go either in a straight line or in a curved line. I couldn't find exactly the thing I'm talking about, but I found something close. This is a round tube connector, and it's used for anytime you want to have a kind of like, if you're clamping things together and you need a pole to go that way and a pole to go that way, you can see this thing has these little swiveling pieces of metal that allow you to realign and readjust the application. So a round tube connector. I think I encountered something like that. It wasn't that exactly, but it was very close. And I was just like, I was looking at this thing with this little swiveling, rotating cuff inside the metal. And it planted a seed of thought in my head. I was like, wait a minute. What if the Vrusks, with that abdomen lower area, the bit of bone that you see in the diagram, what if that can rotate? What if they've got the ability to like swivel that part of their rib cage, which would then allow them to go from this kind of configuration to this kind of configuration? That kind of follows suit with what Tony was arguing about. Like the torso is resting on the basis of that beginning of the thorax. So if that had, like, there's obviously some very strong rib cage holding that down. If that had the ability to rotate, and the Vrusk could then swing his legs up, that would solve so many problems. And I thought about it long and hard. It seemed a bit crazy, and I'll get back to the crazy in a second, but I actually thought, that would solve the ability for a Vrusk to get into Gillian Taylor's pickup truck. I even drew a picture of this is how a Vrusk would actually be able to get into a standard car, the kind of thing, the pickup truck, or any modern standard sedan vehicle that you might run into. And again, there's no need to change the chair configuration. There's no need for a science fiction, space age, highly advanced technology for this. He can just leap in, pull open the door, swivel that piece of rib cage around inside, and suddenly his legs come right up and he can sit inside the car. I thought, yeah! And because it does mention in the rule book, the arms of a Vrusk can rotate, like they're double jointed, right? They can move their hand from there, I can't do it, but down to there. And I thought, well, why not have that with the fulcrum of their abdomen, like that torso area? Why not have that also double jointed? And the legs, as per my picture, their legs could be double jointed so that they can actually fold them backwards, and thus apply the brakes and hit the gas and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, yeah, that would work. That would totally work. Now, it is a little crazy. It's a little bonkers for Mother Nature to have bestowed upon these creatures the ability to just swivel your rib cage like that round tube connector. I was just like, is that too much? Now again, this is going so deep into the weeds. I liked applying as much science to Star Frontiers as I possibly could, and I thought, does that make sense in some world? And then I thought about it. I was like, wait a minute. Divorce yourself from being a human being for a minute. Disconnect yourself from being a Homo sapien, and look at some of the crazy stuff we do. The way we can dangle across above huge gaps with nothing more than our fingertips. 200 kilograms-ish, relying on little bits of bone and cartilage that isn't even, like, your fingers have got nothing really to act as like an anchor. There's no solid piece in there. And yet, how many people can just hang off a bar? How many people can do rock climbing? Not a big deal, right? And I thought, yeah, Mother Nature's capable of some pretty crazy stuff. This makes as much sense as what some of the nutty things that human beings can do. And I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to stick with it. So there. That's how a Vrusk could get into a car. And I just thought I would share that. Having just talked last time about how the Vrusks have issues, Tony Oldfield didn't feel like that creature could exist. I was just like, man, there's got to be a way. There has to be a way for me to solve that for my own satisfaction. And this did it well. The swiveling, rotating, rib cage, bottom abdomen bit. Whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there. I don't know how much longer we're going to be driving here, but if we do, and if there's a Vrusk sitting at the side of the road, I can easily offer him a seat because, hey, a Vrusk can totally fit inside a car. Gonna leave it there. Until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.